Greetings all, talking trash. Jason Piche here, Gabe Rodriguez there. We're going to do sports talk, but in the 1 hot minute, I may go outside the sports realm. You never know.
You're free to do so. There's no parameters.
All right. I want you to lead it off, Gabe.
Okay, I'll lead it off because you're gonna finish big. I think.
I always do.
Oh yeah. So I'll lead off. Today's 1 hot minute. Yesterday I was just flipping through the channels before I was gonna hit the hay. Happened to come across UMass Xavier, and no big deal. Really had no vested interest in the game, but. Just see UMass up 10 at the end, you know, game's about to finish. And then it got me to thinking how Xavier at one time was top 10 in the country, really sexy pick by some to be a Final Four team. Now today, they are battling just to get into the NCAA tournament. You look at what's been the difference in the past month and a half or so. Well, it all dates back to their on-the-court brawl with Cincinnati. And what happened, not necessarily to start the brawl, because I feel like Cincinnati was the team that instigated it, but what happened after the fact and how the Xavier players handle it. In particularly their star player, Tu Holloway, who was an All-American candidate. In a press conference the next day, he proceeded to talk about how they were thugs and gangsters and they had to handle themselves on the court accordingly and so on and so forth. But these comments led to a larger suspension than he would have had, and because of that, it seemed like it threw their season off kilter. They were undefeated at the time, they were rolling, and now they're just fighting to get into the NCAA tournament. And on the pro level, I look at something similar, or we'll see how it pans out, but you look at the Boston Bruins. Ever since Tim Thomas decided to forego his trip to the White House, the Boston Bruins have been 4-7. At the time when that happened, they were battling the Rangers for the best record in the Eastern Conference, and now the Bruins will just be happy, it looks like, to secure home ice in the first round. But Tim Thomas, I know that what happens in sports is usually what happens in between the lines or inside the boards in the case of hockey, but it just shows how things you do outside in the locker room can have a large effect on a team, on a season. So we'll see if the Bruins can get things back together. But if not, I think the Bruins, if they exit the playoffs early, people date back to Tim Thomas not going to the White House, and then I think that'll be the end of Tim Thomas in Boston.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see those swing moments in a season. We were talking a little before the show. There's always sort of that moment you can go back to and look at, and sometimes you wonder if that's just something that like people in sports media go back and look for. They need to find a point where things change. But you know what? I think it really does change things. I mean, whether it's psychological or physically it gets into the players, and I don't know what's going on with them, but there are times and things when you can point back and look at it and go, man, from that point on things just went downhill, or sometimes things took an upturn. Right. But you're always looking for that one moment, and especially and it's a great point with the Xavier Cincinnati fight. That team hasn't been the same since. Right. And that's something that won't go away, and you'll always look back at that brawl as being the point where that season turned down. If they pull it back up, maybe no one talks about it.
Right.
But at this point, it looks like.
And if the Bruins make a run, you know, in the
still plenty of time.
Yeah, plenty of time for the Bruins. But, you know, I'm just looking at what's changed, and that's the one thing. And I know they have injuries with Nathan Horton being out. I mean, their offense is really struggling without him. But still, teams deal with injuries all the time. Bruins had injuries last year, overcame them. But it just looks like Tim Thomas being such a focal point that you know, skipping the whole White House deal might come back to haunt him.
I agree. I didn't like the move when he made it. All right, for my 1 hot minute, I've decided I'm going to stay in sports, Gabe. I know we were wondering. I'm just going to get in what I have to say about that at the end of the show, because I think we both have something to say about that, and we're both right, just like 99% of the rest of America would think on that topic. But let's stick with sports right now. I just want to talk a little bit about storming the court right now. Last night you had some storm in the court. When Binghamton got their first win of the year after 27 straight losses. They beat the top team in America East, Vermont, on their home court. Of course, any UVM fan or player or anyone involved with the program is probably pretty shocked. I'm sure even Binghamton fans were shocked. They stormed the court, I don't know how I feel about that one. And then conversely, Seton Hall beats a top 10 team last night at home against Georgetown, and their security stops people from storming the court. And I'm not really sure why they stopped them. And it kind of gets you into that. It's a big topic in sports talk. They've talked about it on a lot of different shows. When to storm the court, when not to storm the court. I don't know if we've ever touched on it here, so I want it to swing into a discussion, Gabe. When should we be storming the court and when not? I know I've mentioned before, when it comes to soccer and they storm the court or they storm the field, people die. But for some reason, nobody gets hurt in these basketball ones, yet sometimes they don't allow it, and then sometimes it's frowned upon. When's right to storm?
See, I like to base storming the court on an individual basis. Like, if you're the favored, probably don't storm the court. Mm-hmm. But what also happens, too, is I think in terms of when teams are allowed to storm the court, a lot depends on security, a lot depends on preparation. For instance, if a team's highly ranked and they win at the buzzer, student body might rush the court because it's a buzzer beater.
Sure.
You know, conversely, like last night, Binghamton, I mean, they are trying to stave off history. They were the worst team in Division I basketball, and they beat the top team in their conference. So with all that being said, they still had 2,400 people at the game, which is outstanding for an America East game, let alone for a team that hasn't won a game. Right. So I could see why the build-up, and I think with their student body, the loyalty of just showing up and being there. So I think that's why they stormed the court. I also think security wasn't prepared. And like when you said Seton Hall.
Why would they be?
Yeah, why would they be? And Seton Hall, the Seton Hall game, conversely, I think a couple factors play in. One, they play on a nice floor, which used to be NBA or arena, or still is NBA arena.
One more year.
So, you know, you have that, so you don't want to have college students running on the floor, and then, too, if there's a hockey game the next day, you know, you just want to get them off and get back to business.
I get that.
But, I mean, Seton Hall is a regular season victory against number 8 Georgetown. Some people say act like you've been there.
Right.
I love to see the passion and enthusiasm, but it's a double-edged sword because it just takes one time when you storm the floor to have an injury or something. Someone gets severely hurt or
I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often. Like I said, in soccer you hear about people dying. And then in basketball it happens how many times per season? I never even really hear of an injury. I don't know if it's because they're not happening or because they don't report it. Right. But it's a melee. I've been in a few. I mean, it's kind of bedlam. I mean, you're all happy, so at least you know no one's in there like drunk and angry, you know, so it's not that kind of crowd. But still, it's weird. I think storming the court is starting to lose its appeal because it is happening too much. Right. But I do agree with you that I think it's a case-by-case situation. And even though I've never liked Binghamton or their fans because I'm obviously a little biased in this region, I feel like there was a good time to storm last night. You beat the top team. It wasn't you beating UNH. It was you beating the top team. And a team that's had some history with Binghamton over the years, and you're having a down year, and you just stuck it to UVM in a bad way, because now I'm pretty sure they're going to end up second place at best in America East.
Likely, yeah.
I'm really putting the pressure on them to win their last game against UMBC now. So it puts them in a really tough spot. And bravo. I mean, I think it's a time to storm, and I think if you beat a top 10 team at home, even if they're in your conference, I don't know if it's okay to storm. I think I'm only okay if you beat the number 1 team at home. Or it's your rival. So there's so many things that come into play here.
So many variables take place. I mean, you look at the Big East. If Rutgers were to defeat Syracuse, they probably storm the floor. Another thing has to do, I really think, with score. If you're beating someone by 20 points, it's kind of like a moot point.
Right.
But I really think it's the buzzer beater. It's the barn burners. It's when the game is in doubt, and you're changing. A lead changes hands 3 or 4 times in the last few minutes. That's when I think all the intensity rises, and that's when the passion happens, and then that's when they storm the floor.
It's true. Yeah, close game. I see it a lot more. I think it makes a lot more sense there. I still feel like there's got to be some. If you're the favorite team,
you want a universal like rule, like a 10 Commandments of when and why to storm the floor.
There's a part of me that wants that, but then I realize that that's where it starts to lose some of its panache and what it's all about. and it's all about that passion spilling out on the floor. And any time that passion leads all those fans to decide, let's go meet at the center and really party about it, who am I to stand in the way of a good time? So I say keep storming, but I don't like that Seton Hall stopped people. I feel like it's just better to let them do it and let them get it out of their system. Instead, you had a lot of angry fans filtering back through the arena, probably throwing stuff everywhere, and they have a little less care for their home arena, which is not really what you want when you're hosting a home game. So I think teams need to prepare and have a plan for, hey, people may storm the court at all times. Like all colleges or all arenas should all have like a plan for let them go, then we'll get them off afterwards, and then we'll
maybe
move
that's
on.
Maybe that should be our new business. We can be consultants. Security for storming the court. We can do that.
Yeah, I'm down.
Come into an arena near you.
All right, but so how did UVM lose to Binghamton last night, by the way?
Binghamton scored more points than them. But in reality, I mean, it's just hard to fathom UVM losing that game. I think pretty much everyone chalked up the last 2 games of the season would go to UVM playing the 2 worst teams in the league. The coaching staff went over and over. Binghamton's due. They have not won a game. They're due. They're going to give it everything they have. They're playing at home.
Yep.
And what's at stake? I mean, UVM wins the next 2 games. They secure an NIT bid. They secure the top seed in the America East tournament, which if they make the finals, they are playing at home where they're undefeated thus far going into league play with 1 game remaining at home.
Yep.
If you look, I didn't watch the game, but if you look at the box score, UVM was atrocious from the 3-point line. I mean, they shot in the teens, I believe, percentage-wise, so you can say they shot way too many threes, but conversely, against in the Niagara game, they shot the hell out of the ball from 3-point range.
Yep.
So obviously, they probably should have gotten the ball inside more. Seemed like they didn't come out of the shoot ready to play because Binghamton jumped on top of them, got up 10, and UVM
Right, and then it
couldn't
probably climbed into their head a little bit that, what's happening?
Right, and then too, as the game's progressing, the Binghamton bench is saying, hey, this is our game. You know how we talked about we got to win one. This is the one. And then the crowd gets into the game.
Sure.
And, it's like the 6th man gets involved, and, UVM has to overcome that. Another thing, look at the box score. I mean, you can't have Brian Vocal scoreless. You can't have anyone who plays 31 minutes a game be scoreless. I know he had 11 rebounds, but that's playing 4-on-5 on offense, and then that puts a lot of pressure on the perimeter to make shots, which they weren't. And then in addition to that, if you play off Vocal, it's harder to get the ball inside because he's like you can guard him almost as if you're playing a one-man zone. So if I'm guarding Brian Vocal, I just stay in the paint and let him shoot. And then also that takes away his passing lanes, and then you can help when they do pass the ball in the post.
Yeah. It's one of the things I really wish that he would add more to his game. I think it's a confidence issue. I don't think it's that he can't do it. I feel like it's inside his head. But he's such an unselfish player that he packs the stat sheet usually in a lot of other areas, so you don't miss the points. But none, that's not great. I'm not saying it's all his fault or anything like that, but it is weird to see a player of his caliber not have any points at all.
Right, and I also think tempo played a role in the game. You saw UVM coming off 92 points. Not saying you're not scoring 92 points every game, but if you talk before the game, if the game's in the 70s, Binghamton does not have the talent or the firepower to keep up in the 70s. Where UVM has Clancy Rugnow scoring in the teens at times. I mean, UVM has like 8 or 9 guys who if they scored 10 or 12 points, you would not be surprised. No. So I just think the slow pace, the slow tempo, maybe UVM in those type of games, especially against a team like Binghamton, maybe you press a little, even though you're not used to pressing, just to get the tempo up a little bit and speed up Binghamton. Plus, Binghamton's not very talented, not very deep. No. So if you get the tempo up and you get going up and down, you may tire them out, and then that's when the numbers that UVM has would take over, because UVM and Stony Brook by far the deepest teams in the America East.
Sure, and now UVM's made the road tougher for themselves because they're going to have, if they're going to end up in that 2-3 part of the America East tournament, which means that they would likely meet up with BU, who's a team they've beaten twice this year, but only by 1 point in each game. So, or was it 2 points in the second game?
No, first game it was 1, and then second game it was by 1 point at BU, and
Right.
then the first game they got blown out. It was DJ Irvin's first game back from concussions.
BU is a good team, and it's
Right.
tough to beat a good team 3 times in 1 year. And
Exactly.
now they don't get the luxury of doing it in the finals at home like they would have before. They'll have to meet them down at Hartford, potentially. I mean, you never know.
Right,
Things could still change.
And then the other thing is too, you have to go to Stony Brook. Stony Brook, just like UVM, has not lost a home game.
Right.
So, and for the and it will be Stony Brook's first time trying to get into the dance. In the past, it's been proven in the America East. All these teams that were fighting to get their first shot at the NCAA tournament, it's been bedlam at their arena. I remember when we played at Albany the first time they beat us in the championship game. They were having kegs and eggs. Students were camped out, ready to go. I mean, the place where you couldn't even call a play if the team was on the other side of the court and have your players hear you.
Right.
So you have to use hand signals and things like that. But it's really deafening. Same thing happened when UMBC won it. Same thing happened when Binghamton won it. So I would expect
Stony
nothing
Brook's been
less
in
from
before.
Stony. Right, but they haven't hosted
hosted the championship game.
So if they host this time, I mean, it's going to be a raucous crowd.
Insanity.
Yes.
I don't know. We'll see how it all pans out. In other UVM sports, UVM men's hockey actually got a win last weekend, which was pretty surprising.
Did.
And they'll have their final weekend at home coming up this weekend against BU. One of those games is on the NBC Sports Network, so you can check it out. As a man who's had to endure all of these games, I am glad to see the season finally coming to a close. It has not been a very good season. I don't want to speak for those guys, but I think it's been a long, tedious year for all of us involved with the program. Hopefully they can spin it around next year. It can't get much worse than it's been this past year. Hopefully they can go out with a bang here at home on senior weekend against BU and mess up their season a little bit because the playoffs aren't happening for them this year.
Yeah, it's one of the unfortunate things about Hockey East that not every team makes the postseason tournament. So at least throughout the season, when you're not mathematically eliminated, you can always point to getting better, getting better. We still have a shot if we win our postseason tournament. Some people credit that as the reason why Binghamton won yesterday, conversely on the men's basketball side. Because unlike, say, the Ivy League, which is the only league in Division I where the regular season champ gets the automatic bid. Every other league has a postseason tournament. So no matter how poorly Binghamton's playing, they have a shot no matter what. And granted, the rules are stated out in hockey beforehand, so UVM knew their predicament once they lost so many games, so that's no excuse. But if it were set up differently and every team could get into the tournament, I think you would have something more to play for, and then you could keep building a little more.
Yeah, maybe that's why the Hockey East is looking to expand. They'll be adding Notre Dame soon. Maybe they do want to have all their teams in it, but I don't know. But for now, I don't know as though UVM would have been able to get in there and make that kind of a run. It is what it is. The season is over. Speaking of seasons that are over, the NFL Combine starts today, I believe. I feel like it's an overrated system. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, overrated to a degree of, quarterbacks are out there. They're not facing OCU Minura, Justin Tuck. They're not in their face when they're throwing these balls out there. So, I mean, some people will shine and flourish in one of those settings where other people will not. I think football is the biggest sport in terms of looking at times, looking at bench presses. You look at Jason Pierre-Paul, he was a freak and an anomaly at the Combine. It's shown that that talent has taken over. And then from way back, probably 10 years ago, former BC alum Mike Mamula, who went to the Eagles, he tested off the charts as well. And the Combines and the Eagles draft him in the top 10, and he winds up being a flop. So you got to be really careful in terms of overvaluing the Combine.
I feel like the Combine gives you a good sense of what a player's physical ability is. But I think we all know in sports that it's more than just about your physical talents. There's something else I think that would be more important than the Combine, and that would be the classroom. It'd be interesting more for these teams to get a chance, I think, when they get to sit down with a player, see what kind of player they are. They can have those stats that say how fast this guy runs a 40, how high he jumps, all that kind of stuff. But a guy's shuttle time doesn't mean as much as whether that player is teachable. Because if he's got a base set of skills and is teachable, that's the kind of guy you want on your team. You don't want a guy that's going to go out and cause trouble or change his name or wear a yellow Hall of Fame jacket on your sideline. That's the kind of guys that teams really want to build around. You want the talent, but at the end of the day, you want somebody upstairs that's going to mesh well with your team and not create a lot of problems. And I think that gets a little lost come combine time. But still nice to get some stats on guys, but you can't really take a lot out of it.
Yeah, I think too when you look at the combine, maybe it's used as an eliminator. I mean, if you have wide receivers running a 4.7 or 4.6, no matter how smart they are, no matter how well they played, you know 4.7's just not going to cut it at the wide receiver position.
True.
So there's in some ways you can just eliminate people from that, and then some guys will improve enough where they might open your eyes, and then you do give them an opportunity. Or they have that combination of, like you said, intangibles, intelligence, and they're on the gray area, they're the border of what you want in terms of speed and strength and reps, and then you take a flyer on that person because of their character.
Yeah. So. Well, it'll be interesting to see who the stars are this year that come out of the combine. I wanted to see what you thought about real quick. Brady Quinn had some thoughts on Tim Tebow. We haven't talked about Tim Tebow in quite a while, so I figured, what the heck, bring him back. Everybody's talking about Linsanity. Why can't we? Let's remember Tebow, because apparently Brady said some things, and he had a whole long conversation, and apparently he said a lot of nice things, but only the bad things were taken out. Now a lot of the pressure is getting put on this guy who did the article, and I don't have a problem with the things that Brady Quinn said. I feel like he was just being honest. He seems to get along pretty well with Tim Tebow from everything I've heard and said and seen up until this point. So I don't think we should read too much into that.
Right. For those of you who don't know, I think it was for GQ. The article was on Tim Tebow, and they asked Brady Quinn his thoughts on the whole Tebow phenomenon. And for the first time ever, you see the sports writer said he kind of misquoted Brady Quinn, or took some stuff out of context, which is a first, which lends credence to Quinn's notion that he wasn't bashing Tebow. But like you said, Quinn was being very candid, but it's one of those things you just don't say.
Right.
Because if it does leak out, you look like the bad guy,
Sure.
and now you're looked at as an adversary to Tebow. But in the long run, all that matters is how Tebow performs on the field. Like you said, it's the off season, so people are just fishing for stories.
Yep. And I'm going to segue off season to mid season, because the NBA is going to be having their All-Star game. The NBA dunk competition features 4 men, and I will tell you their names. We have a Jeremy Evans from Utah. We have a Paul George from Indiana. We have Derek Williams from Minnesota. And we have Chase Budinger from Houston. All right.
I can see your excitement.
I know Derek Williams.
When are we flying down? When are we flying down to go see the dunk contest?
Actually, my family would love that if I flew down, because I'm supposed to be down there. My family's down there. I'd like to wish happy birthday to my grandmother. My family is all down in the Orlando area. I should be down there. But I am not going all the way down there for a dunk competition.
And for the looks of it, by the names, you might be able to snag a ticket. The dunk contest.
Perhaps. I'm unsure. Like, I know who Derek Williams is. He's a rookie. He came from Arizona. Right. I do remember Chase Budinger from his days in Arizona, but didn't really realize he was still in the league. I do not know the other 2 fellas. I'm assuming they can dunk, but I am picking Chase Budinger because he's the only dude in there that does not have 2 first names, and you can't trust those guys. They're shady.
Oh, God. We'll see how your theory works, but the dunk contest, it really should be taken out of All-Star Weekend.
What?
Or what they need to do is revamp it. You need to get the best guys in there. Yeah. I don't know what you do. If you have $1 million purse that goes to one of their favorite charities or something like that, you have to do something, because guess what? A car's not going to work. These guys have 8 cars, and they're all nicer than the Kia that sponsors the NBA. So if the NBA wants to make the dunk contest relevant again, you need to up the ante, get some sponsors. I mean, just get Sony, do a PlayStation thing. Winner gets his name on the video game, winner gets $5 million to his charity.
Winner gets the cover of the video game.
Yeah, you know, things like that. You know, just something you need.
Gabe's an idea machine, NBA.
Man,
Call him up.
I'm trying.
Come on,
trying.
This is
but
good.
you know, until then, like people are not going to care. Like you, I mean, you're basically making a joke of the entrance. I mean, Jeremy Evans. I wouldn't be surprised if he got dropped to the D League before the All-Star game.
Hey, I'm not saying these guys can't dunk.
Right.
And they might prove me wrong. I'm just saying, like you said, I think we want to see some names in there. Like back when Dwight Howard would get in this thing, you're like, I'm interested. Or Blake Griffin when he did it. Oh, okay. You know, back in the day when you had Dominique and Spud and all these guys going toe-to-toe, you're like, what, man, who's going to win this thing? Got Mike Jordan in here?
Or this LeBron guy who you see on SportsCenter every night. Why is he not in it?
I don't know. You're right. They need to find some way. If they're going to do it, they need to find some way to do it big, do it right with the guys that you want to see dunking. Did you know that last Sunday was Hockey Day in America?
I did.
Did you know it prior to Sunday?
Yes, because I was setting up the DVR for some programming, and it just popped up, Hockey Day in America.
I know how much we like to talk about the NHL.
And I watched none of those games.
I did, but did not know that it was Hockey Day in America until all of a sudden I saw some hockey on and was like, oh wait, it's Hockey Day in America? How did I not know about this? I mean, I really do follow the NHL pretty well, and
well, we talked
genuinely
about this.
should have known about this.
We talked about this before. The NHL suffers from a major marketing problem.
Yes.
We talked about it at the NHL All-Star Game when we said the game lacks stars, or stars that cross over, that housewives would know, or non-hockey fans would know. That's the problem with the NHL. So if they can't even do that, if they can't even promote their major stars, how are they going to, make a big deal out of Hockey Day in America?
I just don't know how I didn't know about it. Like, if it's going to be some big thing, make it a big thing. I understand they're trying to have, the Winter Classic, and they want to have this Hockey Day in America, and they had one Hockey Day in Canada, it was the day before.
Right.
I get that they're trying to make some of those event things happen, and that's great, but they need to get it out there a little bit more, because here's somebody who follows sports quite a bit and had no idea that it was even going on. I just stumbled upon it because it happened to be hockey, and I was home on a Sunday.
Right.
But, I mean, Gabe has tons of good ideas for the NBA, and he's sharing to the NHL as well. I mean, this guy, come on.
I'm a free agent.
Let's go, Leagues.
Free agent.
Let's go, Leagues. Pick him up. I have one other fun question I want to get on before we go off the air, and I'm going to take a twist on an old game and gonna make it fan friendly for this portion. And I'm gonna say date, marry, kill.
Date, marry, kill.
You know what we're talking about.
Yes.
I got tennis player Serena Williams, race car driver Danica Patrick, soccer player Alex Morgan, who was recently in this swimsuit edition of Sports Illustrated. What do you got?
Who's the second one?
That's Danica Patrick.
I don't condone murder, but in this one, I would say marry Morgan, date Serena.
You're going to have to watch a lot of soccer if you're married to Morgan, and that's exactly why I would not marry her.
Good point.
I don't think you thought about it. I mean, of the three, I'd rather watch tennis the most, but I don't think I could put up with Serena. She's got a lot of attitude.
And she might make you braid your hair.
Or lack thereof. I might have to get a weave.
That wouldn't be a bad thing. That wouldn't be a bad thing.
I don't know.
So now I'm officially sleeping on the sofa tonight. Thank you very much.
I thought it would be a fun question for everybody to get involved in. You know what? I forgot to plug the phone back in after one hot minute. That's my bad. I make them from time to time. We're about done for now. You got anything else to add before we go?
Senior Day this weekend, UMBC. Go support Matt Glass, Pat Bergman, two of Vermont's finest.
Yes, thank you for your service, gentlemen. We'll be back next week with Fresh Trash. Thanks for coming.